We are live. Yeah, I'm excited because apparently R2 is coming out on March 17th. So
Okay.
we know that R1 took the world by storm and shocked everyone.
Yeah.
We'll see how R2 does.
Yeah. Well, there's another one that everyone's trying to get invite codes for.
Yeah, Manus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the hopefully on that list somewhere. We'll see. Because I've seen people are loving it, and and other people are like, yeah, it's not what it says it is. So
Okay.
it's mostly people loving it. So all right, well, it is 8:01. We do have a bunch of stuff to talk about. We might as well jump right into it. And welcome back to Silicon Scoop. I believe this is our live version 65. But a podcast we're approaching 200.
Cool.
But welcome back. And today we're going to talk about the worldwide X outage. As today we're recording this is March 11th, and yesterday there was a huge disturbance where X was under a distributed denial of service attack, and was out for a big chunk of the day. And there's a lot of stuff going on around it. John, you said you weren't affected by this.
Yeah. No. I use Twitter more just to stay on top of things. So I use it for when I get notifications. So I was getting notifications of new tweets, posts, whatever. I hate that. I hate that he changed the name to X, by the way. I'm gonna, I'm just gonna call it tweets. I don't care. I don't care if we get backlash. But yeah, I get notifications on new tweets. Getting that, and there were times where it said post not unavailable. But that's it. Like once, I think it happened.
So there was significant disruption of services for millions of users globally. Initial investigations indicate it was a sophisticated distributed denial of service attack. Elon Musk claims regarding the attack are prompting some controversy. We're going to get into that. And the attribution of cyber attacks remain a complex issue of, who did it, where'd they come from, that kind of stuff, because, it's not easy. And if you're good, you can route your stuff through different areas and have different IPs with different VPNs. And the incident highlights the ongoing vulnerabilities within major social media platforms. So
yeah.
Let's get into this. The outage of cyber attack, it says March 11th here, but it's March 10th that the cyber attack happened. I just happened to write this this morning early. So at 2 a.m., there was initial wave affecting primary mobile users. And then by 6:30, a second wave impacting both web and app interfaces. And by 8:15 to 10:15, the most severe outage period. And then throughout the day, there was sporadic interruptions. During peak disruptions, users logged over 40,000 complaints, indicating issues across multiple continents. So they were out. It was a huge thing. It seems like Elon Musk is getting a lot of negative attention, as it were, these days for all sorts of reasons. Experts suggest that the attack was a sophisticated distributed denial of service attack. This type of attack overwhelmed servers with massive traffic, making services unavailable. According to NetBlocks, the attack was characterized by multiple waves targeting different system vulnerabilities, distributed sources across various countries, evasion of DDoS mitigation techniques, and specific targeting of X's infrastructure. So,
yeah. So for those of you that don't know what a DDoS attack, they're just a way to disrupt online services. What they do is they flood a website with traffic from these bots and stuff from multiple different nodes, we'll call them, and overwhelm its servers, making it inaccessible to users. So they're difficult to defend against because they can be launched from anywhere, like you said, and they can involve these nodes that are difficult to trace. So I don't know where Elon's coming from, where he's just blaming the Ukraine, but I'm not surprised. But yeah, I know there was a hacking group that took credit for it. Do you know do you know more information about them?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the pro-Palestinian hacker group called Darkstorm in a minute. So we haven't even got to Elon Musk's claims. So
Oh,
Elon Musk,
sorry.
yeah, you
Sorry,
just said,
Highland.
a ridiculous claim. We haven't told anybody what it was. So Elon Musk claims and accusations. Elon Musk addressed the outage promptly on social media, saying X has experienced a massive DDoS attack working to mitigate. His subsequent tweets claim that attack needed significant resources beyond typical hackers. Traffic patterns suggested state-sponsored involvement. Many attacking IP addresses originated from Ukraine. Timing of the attack coincided with his political statements. So this implied possible retaliation by Ukraine, leading to backlash from experts questioning the validity of his assertions. So that more details can be found on article in Times India where we were looking. We were talking just before we got started, but there's a lot of ways to route traffic, and a lot of hacker traffic is routed through Ukraine. So, whether that is just a function of how people do it and it's easy to do that, or whether there's massive amounts of hacker groups specifically there doing stuff, that's a different story. And I'm not going to say whether that's related to this or not. So Dark Storm, the pro-Palestinian group Darkstorm team, claims responsibility through their Telegram channel. They provided screenshots of successful connectivity disruptions, politically motivated claims against Musk, and technical details suggesting insider knowledge. Orange Cyber Defense categorized them as hacktivists with a history of targeting organizations seen as aligned with Israeli interests. So experts are skeptic about the attribution. Many cyber experts raised concerns over Musk's attribution. They highlighted IP geolocation is often unreliable. Like I mentioned, attackers commonly mask their origins, and attribution requires extensive forensic beyond simple traffic patterns. It's one of those things you can't just look at it. You got to say, okay, what was not only what was coming out of there, but what was going in and that kind of stuff. So it's great that we had Ukraine-based IP address, but I can spoof my IP address right now and pretend I'm something else. So coming from another country. So, there's some political context surrounding this. Criticism of Ukraine military strategies. There was talk about Starlink and the military version of it being used and deployed in Ukraine, and talk about it being shut off for some reason. I'm not really sure if that came from Musk or just other discussions. So proposal for reduced Western aid in Ukraine, as he's supporting with what Trump's doing, and they're trying to stop the war, obviously. However, that discussion didn't go too well a couple of weeks ago in the White House. So hopefully things are back on track for that. Concerns over Ukraine government transparency. So also with Trump, they started withholding money and aid from Ukraine, but the last stuff I saw is that has been turned back on again. It looks like everyone's coming to the table again. So that, there's stuff going on that people are really get upset about. And I'm not going to say one good, one bad, one this, one that, because, I'm not being shot at. I'm not needing military protection. I'm not in those things. So I'm not, I just pray that the killing stops soon, and that, we can get to a peaceful resolution. So, incident elicited various reactions: frustration over access issues, skepticism towards Musk claims, political division regarding motivations, and discussion of alternative platforms. Are people going to go to Blue Sky more now because of this? X focused on technical restoration, implemented enhanced DDoS protections. So that happened. We thought we'd talk about it a little bit because, it happened just yesterday. When this will go out on the podcast, probably March 18th. So it'll be a week from now.
Yeah.
So there'll be a little bit more information available at the time, but the broader implication of this is, can anybody be brought down if somebody decides they don't like their stance on anything, whatever that might be?
Absolutely. Yeah, just use a DDoS attack. These, like, the hacktivists have proven that. Now there are cyber mitigation techniques that can be deployed, but it seems like these DDoS attacks all it is just swarming the site with requests, right? So
yeah, they make legitimate quests that are, the request itself is as light as possible, but the processing time on the server is as heavy as possible.
Yeah.
Meaning that they try to get to 1,000 times difference in processing, where I can make, for example, one of the more modern ones is a time DDoS attack where it's requesting some sort of time synchronization. So that server's got to go out and do something, but it's a very easy request. And they're malform requests, meaning I'll send the request, but I won't wait for the reply. I immediately drop and send the next one, next one, next one. So the server becomes overwhelmed because I don't have to wait. I'm just pounding it with thousands of requests. And now I get thousands of machines on different countries pounding it with thousands of requests. And each of those requests are a heavier load on the server. And eventually the server stops responding.
Yeah.
Just from a, so yeah, they got to, obviously they came at it with some interesting next gen DDoS attacks. So now we have to develop some next gen DDoS mitigation systems, adopt maybe more of a decentralized architecture, collaborative defensive strategies among platforms, potential for new regulatory frameworks for major platforms. So we'll have to see what they end up deciding to do, but it makes everyone, and I think all the platforms, rethink, one, should we be taking a stand on either side on any of these issues? Because when you take a stand on a side, you offend all the people on the other side who now don't like you. Or should you as a company be neutral and maybe you wouldn't have these types of things? I hate it when you're forced into making a choice where I don't want to present our company values because we might be attacked.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What are your final thoughts on this before we jump off?
Yeah, I think this is a great time to talk about Web3 technology and how that could potentially mitigate DDoS, because it's a distributed architecture. But I don't know too much about it can mitigate DDoS attacks to some extent, but it's not entirely immune. But I think as we move to a more decentralized architecture, I think that's going to help. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know what you think around where these attacks came from, and what kind of mitigation strategies, and what else you feel about this X outage. We'd love to hear your feedback. So, scientists have discovered that quantum time works different than regular time. And in fact, there is what we call negative time, and time can actually flow backwards in quantum time, which starts bending my mind. Never mind our reality. What's going on here, John?
Yeah, so we did kind of cover something similar to this, but this is different. This is negative time. But the concept of negative time, it's a paradox in quantum physics, which obviously challenges our conventional understanding of time. So quantum challenges everything, okay? Just put it that way. So this is cool because researchers at U of T have demonstrated that under certain conditions, photon can appear to exit a material before they enter it, which leads to measurements of negative time. So it's linked to the group delay effect, where light interacts with atoms in a material, causing it to be emitted before it seems to have entered. So it's not about time travel, okay? It's not about violating the laws of physics. It's more about highlighting peculiarities of quantum mechanics. So in quantum systems, time can appear to behave differently than in classical physics, which we've talked about, we've covered. You have to throw out all your understanding of physics. And in classical physics, time always moves forward. So in this experiment, in this research that they did, this has implications for our understanding of quantum phenomena. And it could lead to insights specifically relating to quantum computing and theoretical physics. But what do you think about this, Craig?
This was the thing that took me the longest to read and understand, and Negative time doesn't mean particles literally travel backward in time like science fiction. Instead, it refers to wave packet tunneling through quantum barriers exhibiting negative duration.
Yes.
All right. So what's actually happening is a complex reorganization of probabilities. The wave function, which describes the quantum state, reorganizes itself in ways that make it appear as if time flows backwards, even though causality remains intact. So, the example here is, think of it as a car chase by the FBI helicopters through a tunnel. In a classical world, the car enters one end and exits the other. But in the quantum world, probabilities allow parts of the car to appear on the exit side before the whole vehicle has even entered the tunnel, as if the car's presence is leaked through space.
Yeah.
So now we get into the weirdness. Retrocausality. Can the future influence the past? So one of the most mind-bending aspects of quantum time is retrocausality, the idea of that future events might influence past ones. While this seems to violate everything we know about cause and effect, quantum mechanics suggests it might be possible.
Yeah, but just to put things into perspective and quash anything, this does not imply time travel at all. This just shows that quantum mechanics can exhibit behaviors that seem counterintuitive from the classical physics perspective. So it could help us to understand the quantum reality much more deeper, but has nothing to do with time travel. It's for those of you thinking that.
So quantum entanglement and bidirectional time. Entangled quantum systems imply bidirectional time correlations. Wheeler's famous delayed choice experiments demonstrates how post-measurement selection appears to alter previous interactions. So we're going to talk a little bit about that again. And so, so something I do now affects something that happened before. It's not time travel, but it affects the result in the quantum state. Physicist Lee Smolin proposed a quantum twin theory using hidden variables to avoid faster than light signaling rather than physical backward causation. This theory suggests a restructuring of shared quantum paths. So, this is why things start to, go, we're really not talking about time travel. We're talking about quantum tunneling, the ability for particles to pass through energy barriers that classically couldn't overcome. Reveals fascinating insights about time symmetry at the quantum level. So Steinberg's groundbreaking experiments with cold atoms showed that non-invasive measurement effectively stops time for tunneling particles. Using weak measurement techniques, his team tracked particles as they tunneled through barriers, something previously thought impossible without disrupting the quantum state. So John Wheeler's delayed choice thought experiment suggests that the act of measurement can influence how a particle behaved in the past. The paradox emerges from quantum experiments where the experimental setup is changed after a particle has already decided whether it behaves as a wave or a particle.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is cool because it's going to help to develop more efficient quantum algorithms, and it's going to obviously improve our ability to control quantum states. And obviously, in turn, lead to breakthroughs in cryptography, simulation, and definitely optimization. So this is really cool. I really like this.
Yeah, and I want to understand it more because it's mind-bending as it is. Despite the theoretical nature, quantum time concepts are finding practical implications or applications in cutting-edge technologies, like you're talking about. Quantum computer leverage superpositioning and entanglement to perform calculations in ways that classical computers cannot. The time symmetry properties of quantum systems are being exploited to develop more efficient quantum algorithms, like you mentioned. And you got to wonder if it's utilizing some of these concepts when I can't remember. I think it was Willow who did 10,000 years worth of research in a few minutes, and they thought, well, maybe it attacked it. Leverage the multiverse. Maybe it was leveraging some of these time stopping reverse time things as well. Quantum cryptography and temporal security. So quantum key distribution systems using principles of quantum measurement to create unhackable communication channels. The temporal aspect of quantum measurement ensures that any eavesdropping attempt disturbs the quantum state in detectable ways. So quantum time challenges our deeply held belief that time flows linearly from past to future. If particles can exhibit negative tunneling times, or if measurement choices can influence past events, is time fundamentally different than we've always assumed? What do you think?
I don't know. It's tough because I obviously, if you're getting to the quantum level, you throw out everything, you throw out all your understanding. But yeah, I'm not. I don't know.
Quantum is magic.
Quantum is magic.
Yeah, you can say what you want. We're going to explain it eventually. Any significantly advanced technology can appear as magic, right?
Yeah.
So quantum gravity and time, the holy grail of theoretical physics, reconciling quantum mechanics and general relativity, centers largely around resolving incompatible treatments of time. So quantum time forces us to reconsider our most basic assumptions that time flows uniformly forward. The evidence from quantum mechanics suggests a more complex picture, one where time can bend, branch, and even appear to run backwards under certain conditions. I'd love to hear what you think about this. Is quantum time going to change our reality, or is it just going to change computing? How do you translate this into the future technologies and where we're going with quantum computing? I'd love to hear some feedback on what you think is happening here. Any last words, John?
No, this is, I always love the new discoveries. I love that this is U of T research, and yeah, it's great.
And yeah, this article with the well research is on torontostarts.com. It's if you're listening to this on the podcast, just click on the show notes. It'll take you right to this page. It's the podcast page where this is at. And we'd love to have you leave a comment. So we talked about this a little while ago, how Google is in a fight with an antitrust lawsuit in the States.
Yeah.
Where they want them to break up and break Google away from Chrome for a number of reasons. We're going to get into that bit. And Google has come back and said, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to share and be more transparent and do some other things. And we're going to get into that. And the U.S. Department of Justice has pretty much said, yeah, I don't think so. But the final results are coming out on April 25th. So the U.S. Department of Justice is demanding the break of Google Chrome to address the monopolistic practices. And the antitrust lawsuit highlights concerns over Google control of search and AI sectors. So potential remedies include mandatory divestiture of Chrome and tighter regulation on AI investments. And the outcome could reshape the competitive landscape for tech companies, impacting regulation and policy and browsers even. So implications extend beyond Google, influencing antitrust actions against other tech giants. All right. Before we get into this, John, anything you want to jump into before?
No, I just, I guess when I read the article, it seems like they're reaffirming their stance against Google, and saying it must break up parts of its business, requiring the divestiture of the Chrome browser. So they're really digging their heels in for this, which is interesting given Trump. But yeah.
Yeah, so Judge Mehta determined that Google violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act through a complex web of exclusive agreements that entrenched its dominance. At the heart of the case was Google's multi-billion-dollar deals with device manufacturers and browsers, most notably a $20 billion annual agreement with Apple to secure the default search engine status on iPhones and Apple devices. These agreements effectively block competitors from gaining meaningful market access, with the court finding they created insurmountable barriers for rival search engines. So, That could be. I argue in some ways that people like the Firefox makers of Firefox, they get 90% of the revenue from Google because of agreements like this. And what happens when agreements like this go away? Now, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be stopped. I just want to understand what happens when they go away.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice views Chrome, with its commanding 60% of the global market share, as a crucial gateway that enables Google's monopolistic practices. The browser serves as both a data collection mechanism and distribution channel for Google's search engine. Chrome, important to Google, cannot be overstated. It provides a direct pipeline of user data that powers Google's search algorithm. It defaults to Google search, driving massive query volume. It enables seamless integration with all the other Google products, and it gives Google control over web standards and technologies. So the DOJ argues that forcing Google to divest Chrome would eliminate a key mechanism that reinforces search dominance while creating a space for more competition in both browser and search markets.
Yeah.
Without Chrome, Google would lose significant advantage in directing users to its search engine and collecting valuable behavior data, which it uses to feed its AI and whatnot as well.
Yeah. So this is interesting just because like I barely use Google search nowadays. Like I'll use it, but like I'll use the output of Gemini at the top. But actually the output of Gemini at the top is, I'm finding, not very accurate anymore. And so like I asked it about some movie that was coming out that actually was a hoax, and it said, oh yeah, it's coming out this date, this date, this date. So I don't know what the hell Google is doing over there, but they're definitely falling behind. And I don't know if I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't on the same screen. Well, you should have let me know that. I did have this screen.
I did. I sent you a private message.
Oh, sorry. I see it there in the private chat. Yeah, I apologize. Because you have to switch tab. Doesn't matter. Sure. So beyond the antitrust lawsuit, takes aim at the company's aggressive push into artificial intelligence, particularly its significant investment in AI startups like Anthropic. Speaking of alternatives, initial proposal from the DOJ, complete divestment from AI startups like Anthropic, a revised demand, mandatory pre-notification to regulators about future AI investments. The underlying concern is preventing Google from using its monopoly profits to dominate the nascent AI sector as well.
Yeah. The biggest thing that worries me about this is the implications for other big tech companies and what's going to happen once this goes through. Who are they going to go after next? What are they going to go after next? And what's going to happen? Like what's the broader implication for this, right?
Yeah, and what happens if if they can't invest in AI companies, why can Microsoft?
Yeah.
Why can these other companies that are?
Why can Amazon? Why can
So I curious around that. Now maybe because Google has all the data, and as a result,
Amazon has all the data. They've got their online platform, which is a monopoly. They've got AWS, which is pretty much like the go-to gold standard for cloud services. Yeah, why not Amazon?
Because Amazon doesn't have a browser that 60% of the world uses. Amazon has information of the people on their platform actively, but they don't have the real world experience of what people are doing day to day, minute to minute, jumping from here to there, and their patterns, right?
Yeah.
So Amazon's got a lot of information, but like I said, 60% of the world's browser uses Chrome, and Google's getting all that data, what you're doing, what you're clicking on, what you're not clicking on, all the trends, everything. I think that's the difference.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
And we talked briefly last time about Apple falling behind in AI, and it's because, one, they refuse to use their public data or the private data or whatever to train the model, and two, the on-device processing, which limits them significantly.
Yeah.
Those two things, Google doesn't have that problem. I'm going to use as much data as possible. I got YouTube. I'm going to, and that's why I believe they jumped significantly from the original, hey, glue on my pizza and eat rocks to get your minerals, to a better version of their product.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say the Justice Department advocates for substantial structural changes, mandatory divestiture of Chrome, ban on exclusive default search payments to device manufacturers, required sharing of advertising and search data with competitors, prohibition on preferential treatment for Google's own services, and transparency requirements around algorithm changes. So these measures aim to create what the Assistant Attorney General calls meaningful, substantial relief by dismantling the foundations of Google's search monopoly rather than merely regulating behavior. Now, Google came back and said, instead of that, let's have multiple search engine choices on all Apple devices, retention of Chrome with modified distribution practices, commitments to fair algorithm treatment for competitors, enhanced transparency around search ranking factors, and voluntarily limitations on certain exclusive agreements. I don't think Google's going to get their way on this.
No, especially given that DOJ has not changed their stance at all. So.
Yeah, and like you're saying, this is starting to think about creating legal precedents for other companies about, complexities of free service monetized through data collection, how default settings and pre-installations can constitute anti-competitive behavior, evaluates network effects and data advantages as barriers to entry. So what used to be a moat, if you're building a moat, that means you're anti-competitive and you need to be stopped, which, all startups and businesses are told to try and build the moat between them and the competition to make it harder for the competition to compete with them.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. And we talked about Trump because we can't seem to not to for some reason. The Trump administration continued pursuit reflects bipartisan concern about tech monopolies. So the focus on, we talked about last time, we thought maybe with Trump coming in, they would stop this. But the focus on structural remedies rather than financial penalties indicate a shift toward more interventionist approaches. And attention to AI investment shows regulators are forward-looking, aiming to prevent monopolization of emerging technologies.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm curious to see why they're going after this. And there's been no news about Elon Musk canceling Verizon's contract to get Starlink's contract. Or something like that.
Are you talking about a Doge thing?
No, I am talking about Starlink.
Okay, yeah, but you're saying what contract does Verizon have that Starlink has taken? Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, well, you can get into it later. I'll send you the article. Yeah.
Yeah, like if that's something cool, maybe we'll talk about next time because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in April? The judge will have to issue a final ruling, and there's an appeals process regarding of the outcome. Appeals will likely extend for 2 to 3 years, and then a potential Supreme Court review. Given the case's significance, it may ultimately reach the highest levels of court. So we may be in a different government situation once it reaches there. Implementation period, if upheld, any divestiture would include a transition timeline. So, it may take a while.
Yeah.
So consumer choice, innovation, security, global competitiveness, these are all potentially affected as we start to think about our tech companies, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to see where this is going forward. And I'm curious as we're starting to see them paying way more attention to AI constraints and stuff. And this is a little surprising where they're constraining Google on investing versus, invest in everybody you can because we want North American AI to be the best AI in the world.
Yeah.
But from a business, it's monopolistic and potentially anti-competitive. A conflict of interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'd love to know what you think. Is this Chrome breakup going to be good or bad for you as a consumer? Are you looking forward to other browsers being able to catch up, or are Chrome not getting much update? Are you fed up with Chrome as it is? Because I know lots of people are and are looking for a new browser and thinking, hey, that new Opera browser is looking good, or one of those other ones. Let us know what your new browser is going to be once Chrome is taken away from Google, or what you're looking at right now. I'd love to hear your feedback. So let's move on to one of your favorites, shall we?
Yeah.
NASA's quiet X-59 supersonic jet. What's going on here, John?
Yeah, so apparently they've made some progress with their X-59, which is a project aimed at reducing the sonic booms associated with supersonic flight. So for those of you who don't know, when you breach the sound barrier, you get this huge sonic boom that disrupts. It can break windows, a whole bunch of stuff. So the X-59, the way that they've designed it is designed to break the sound barrier while producing only a gentle quote-unquote thump instead of the thunderous sonic booms that typical supersonic aircraft create. And for those of you that know and that are old enough to know, there was a a commercial airliner called the Concorde, which flew from New York to London, I think. But again, it only flew over the ocean because of that supersonic boom. So the way that they achieved this gentle thump was through a unique design which features the engine mounted on top of the aircraft and an elongated nose section, which helps to minimize the noise reaching the ground. So their tests focused on the aircraft's engine performance, which used a modified F414 GE100 engine. This is crazy. It's capable of generating up to 22,000 pounds of thrust. So, so the test, for those of you that don't know, the Skunk Works facility in Palmdale is Lockheed Martin's testing facility. That's where a lot of this stuff happens. So it's been successful. The engine performs as expected, and the next steps are evaluating the electromagnetic interference and conducting taxi tests before the first flight. So this is cool. Again, interesting. What are your thoughts, Craig?
Well, my concern is they really haven't done any test flight with this.
No, they haven't.
But we'll get into their competitor in a bit, which has done some test flights. It's slightly different. The XB1, the Boom Supersonic XB1.
Yeah, who has a lot of sales already too.
Yeah, they've got a few test flights. 3 breaking the sound barrier and 3 times in the same flight and a bunch of stuff. So I discovered that while researching this.
Actually, we talked about the XB1, didn't we?
I don't remember talking about the XB1.
Okay. But aren't they the ones that are trying to commercialize supersonic flight again?
Well, I think everybody seems to be. So we'll get to them in a minute because we might as well talk about the X-59. So the big problem was historically that supersonic travel hit a regulatory wall in 1973 when the FAA banned supersonic flight over land in the United States. Decision wasn't arbitrary. The powerful supersonic booms created a supersonic aircraft were deemed too disruptive to communities below the flight path. So this regulation effectively clipped the wings of commercial supersonic flight. Even the iconic Concorde, which operated from 1976 to 2003, was restricted to trans-ocean routes, significantly limiting its commercial viability. Combined with the high operational cost and fuel inefficiencies, these restrictions contributed to the Concorde's eventual retirement. So one of the cool things about this, it can reach like the supersonic, the Concorde had to use their afterburners the whole time to achieve the speed and consumed a whole bunch of fuel. The X9 and the XB1, or the X-59 and the XB1, don't have to do that. So they're way more fuel efficient at these higher speeds.
Yeah.
So I'm loving the concept because, one, we want to get faster travel and whatnot. And if we can do that, I just don't know. I didn't find the information on what a sonic thump is versus a sonic boom from a decibel level or
Yeah.
whatnot. It says quiet, but a thump doesn't sound quiet to me.
A thump doesn't sound quiet, but it sounds like it could be much quieter than the boom. I've seen video of supersonic booms. I'm sure you've seen that too, and how loud they seem to be and what they can affect. So it's yeah, I'm curious to see, like, so is this thump, is it just been done in like MATLAB and so what I'm interested to see what real world testing brings.
Yeah, and there's lots of challenges with this X59. For example, despite significant progress, the engineers continue to address several challenges like electromagnetic interference between systems require ongoing refinement, pilot visibility due to the long nose. It blocks the forward view, requiring external vision systems like cameras and stuff to see what's going on. Vibration management during transonic acceleration, passing Mach 1, and fine-tuning the flight control software for unique aerodynamics. So there's a lot going on there that they need to overcome. So they're expecting their first flight tentatively scheduled for mid this year, initial flight envelope expansion tests after that, and community response testing plan for 2027 when the aircraft will fly over selected U.S. cities. So we'll be able to figure out then what they sound like. So the data collection from ground sensors and community surveys to measure the actual noise impact. And that will have a lot more information on, what that looks like.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I know that Boom Supersonic is approaching it differently, but I don't know how differently they're approaching it as far as reducing the boom. But they're further ahead as far as timelines goes so far. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and
who gets there first, and who and what the outcomes are. So
yeah, the boomless cruise on the XB1 is possible at speeds of Mach 1.3.
Yeah. Oh, so the XB1, to reduce supersonic booms, they're looking to fly higher at higher altitudes.
55,000 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't know what the difference in the disruption will be at the ground level for this kind of stuff. But it's also, they're only going up to 1.3. If they start going faster than that, it becomes a concern. When in boomless cruise, speeds are 40 to 50% faster than conventional liners. This means a flight from New York to Los Angeles can be up to 90 minutes shorter. Hybrid routes with overland and overwater segments such as Chicago and Frankfurt will also see incremental time savings. So people are excited.
Yeah.
The long nose creates weaker, more diffusion for the initial shock waves. The smooth underside prevents additional shock formation. The carefully shaped fuselage prevents shock waves from different parts of the aircraft from merging. And the top mounted engine that you mentioned places shock waves away from the ground directed pass. So
yeah, and it makes sense because if you see, it's essentially you're breaking through an air membrane, right? When you're breaking through the sound barrier. So like it's a barrier that you're breaking through. So if you can minimize that breakage point, or then in theory it makes sense what they're doing. But I'm no expert.
Yeah, and it looks like the XB1 is trying to they get the boom to go upwards as well.
Well, what their approach is, that from what I read, is that by flying at high altitudes, the boom will refract upward.
Yes.
And not reach the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Refract is the right word. So love to hear what you think. These things are going to be 30 to 40 to 50% faster for flights while using the same amount of fuel, if not less. So this sounds great, right? Yeah. And I think we'll have to see some interesting new companies building these things. Now, I don't travel as much as I used to, but being able to cut your travel time significantly is amazing.
Yeah.
The X-59 is designed to cruise at approximately 1.4, and its cruising altitude is at 55,000 feet as well.
Oh, so they're both doing okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So, I guess they're trying to get the refraction benefit as well.
Yeah.
NASA contracted with Lockheed Martin for approximately $247.5 million to design, build, and deliver the X-59 aircraft. The total program cost, including testing and research, is significantly higher, but represents an investment in technology that could transform civil aviation. So Lockheed Martin is probably going to have the upper hand on this.
Yeah.
So interesting. Love to know what you think. Are you going to be jumping on these quiet sonic boom-less planes and traveling around the world anytime soon and making those trips faster, or you think this is a pipe dream and we're really not going to go there, or it's only going to be for the super elite? Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your comments. So I think we talked about last week or the week before in one of these sessions about how the UK has ordered Apple to put in a backdoor or whatever into their system, and Apple responded saying, yeah, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to disable advanced data protection for UK users. Instead of putting the backdoor, we're just going to disable it. And so that seemed to have appeased a few people, except Apple's now suing the UK, saying, hey, you made us do this illegally. And I've seen some of Tulsi Gabbard and a few other elected officials in the US responding to this privacy issue. So I think we're going to see some interesting blowback here. What are your thoughts before I get into it?
Yeah, no, get into it and then we can talk thoughts.
All right. So Apple's legal challenge against the UK government marks a watershed moment in the ongoing tension between digital privacy and national security. In January 2023, UK authorities issued a technical capability notice demanding Apple create a backdoor access to encrypted iCloud data under the Investigatory Powers Act. This unprecedented case puts Apple at the forefront of defending end-to-end encryption against government intervention. The dispute centers around Apple's advanced data protection feature, which offers enhanced encryption for sensitive iCloud data that even Apple cannot access. Mm-hmm. So the case is being heard by a specialized investigatory powers tribunal, highlighting its significance in the legal landscape of digital surveillance and rights. I thought that was you texting me. I apologize. Different John. Encryption battles between tech companies and governments aren't new. They've been intensified in recent years, like with the FBI dispute in 2016 over unlocking the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone, set an important precedent when Apple refused to create a backdoor that could potentially compromise all iPhones.
Yeah.
Since then, governments worldwide have increasingly sought legal pathways to access encrypted communications. The UK's Investigatory Powers Act, often called Snoopers Charter, passed in 2016, granting extensive surveillance powers to British authorities. So this ongoing tension reflects fundamental disagreements where to draw the line between security and privacy, and tech companies emphasize the importance of strong encryption for protecting users, while governments cite national security for law enforcement needs.
Yeah.
So Apple's advanced data protection extends end-to-end encryption to most iCloud data categories, including backups, photos, and notes. The ADP and with ADP enabled, this data becomes accessible only to the user, and not even Apple can decrypt it. So the UK government views that level of encryption as problematic for national security and law enforcement investigations. So the technical capacity notice issued to Apple essentially demands the company create a mechanism to bypass this protection.
Yeah.
So facing this requirement, Apple disabled it, and then now have come back and said, well, the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016 forms a central framework in this dispute. The law grants UK authorities expansive surveillance capabilities, including the power to issue technical capability notices that require companies to modify their services to enable data interception. So Apple challenges question whether the TCN exceeds the UK government's legal authority and whether it violates privacy rights guaranteed under both UK and European law. So this is going to be an interesting case.
Yeah, I'm glad Apple's pushing back. It just goes to show Apple's their dedication to user privacy, which is good. They're not just denying the UK, turning off their advanced encryption and just saying, see you later. They're actually fighting back, which is great. I like this.
And the encryption dispute has created diplomatic tensions, as I mentioned before, between the U.S. and the United Kingdoms, because the U.S.-UK Cloud Act agreement, designed to facilitate cross-border data sharing for law enforcement, specifically prohibits either country from imposing requirements that create deliberate security vulnerabilities. So Apple argues that the UK government demands would violate this agreement, potentially undermining the international framework for digital evidence sharing and in criminal investigation. So, and we're seeing that, like I said, the U.S. government starting to respond to this. So we'll have to see whether this is they're breaking their own rules and these other agreements by forcing this.
Yeah.
So Apple public challenge to the UK government is unusual, as the TCNs, the technical, I keep getting it wrong. What do they call those again? Notifications. TCNs. Anyway, I've said it like a bunch of times. The fact that the case has become public suggests that either received special permission to disclose the TSN or that it has taken an extraordinary legal stance against the secrecy requirements, because the TSNs typically come with secrecy provisions that prevent recipients from disclosing their existence. So you got to do this, and you're not allowed to tell anybody that you're doing it. Yeah. So they've come out and said, wait a minute, we've got this. So either they were given permission by somebody, I don't know who, maybe the U.S. government, to say, we've got this TSN, and it's required us to do these things, and we're fighting back now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like the crazy thing is that, well, not the crazy thing, but the interesting thing is that there's no other country that has done what the UK has done since the UK has done this. And so it begs the question, is the UK trying to go too far?
Yeah, small and medium enterprises that rely on secure cloud services may find their security posture compromised if providers are forced to weaken encryption protections, right? So this comes to the statement, which I always like to say, the cloud is just someone else's computer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if your stuff is in the cloud, it's just, it's not a cloud, it's just someone else's computer. So your stuff's on someone else's computer, and they're deliberately being told to make it weak so that people can access it. And we say, okay, well, only the UK government can access. That's not a big deal. Well, that's not true, because if you understand the Five Eyes agreement, they share all the systems. That means someone in the US government can jump over to the UK, log into their UK systems, and check out these encrypted files to see what's going on. Same thing with Canada, Australia, UK, and there's one other. I can't remember who the fifth one is, the Five Eyes.
Yeah.
So, which is one of these ways the governments get around stuff, is saying, okay, well, I'm not allowed to spy on my citizens, and you're not allowed to spy on your citizens, but I can spy on your citizens, and you can spy on my systems, and then I'll just use your system, and you'll use my system, and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So this is kind of how these things kind of work. And so people are upset because, although it affects the UK users, we talked about this last time when we were saying, well, if it's unencrypted, that means pictures, text messages, any of these things involved in the backup of your device that were sent from someone else are now unencrypted in the UK environment.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Groups like Amnesty International and the Electronic Frontier Foundation have filed supportive statements. Conversely, some law enforcement advocacy groups and politicians frame the issue as a technology companies obstructing legitimate investigations and national security efforts. I like to be in the middle. I am in the firm believer of strong encryption and privacy. However, you know, I am not a strong believer in some of the criminal activities that go on. So,
no. Well, you know what? I hate to say it, but like the criminals that are doing criminal activities are not counting on Apple's, well, the smart ones are not counting on Apple's encryption, like a third-party encryption. They're using their own apps. They're using secure operating systems. They're doing things that go beyond what Apple's providing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So who's this targeting then? Who's this actually targeting?
Yeah.
So you're saying it's not targeting the organized criminals because they're using different technology.
Smart organized criminals. So there's obviously a lot of other criminals. That
disorganized criminals. I'll just say that way because
for sure, disorganized criminals. Yeah, let's say that.
You got that. I'm not suggesting. When the government implements these things, you got to question who are they really targeting, and hopefully, the UK has been doing some very weird things lately. And I get really concerned about this when, they're arresting people for, memes they're posting on social media, and there's back and forth between them and Elon Musk, and because, as soon as they put these laws in place, he started posting memes about the UK politicians, and they got really mad. And we're seeing these arrests happen, and you're like, okay, well, is this going to just be another way for the governments to figure out, what you're saying and come after you for your speech?
Yeah. Well, they are one of the most, at least London has, I think, one of the most extensive CCTV networks of any city. Maybe I could be wrong. This was years ago. Maybe it's not that so much anymore. But yeah, they're heavily surveillant. So.
Would love to know what you think on this. Where's this going to fall? Do you think that the UK is way out of line, or do you believe that Apple's right in trying to get everyone's encryption here? We'd love to know where you side on this and where you think it's all going to shake out. Leave the comments in the show note on YouTube, wherever you happen to be watching this. So, John, what do you got going on?
Yeah. So, well, are you releasing all of these next week or just the one?
I'll be releasing just the one next week. The rest
okay, so this will be later on. So so got Startup Drinks TO this month, or just passed, and it'll be next month depending on when this comes out. So come out to that. Other than that, just a few networking events. Looking forward to Futurist in May and maybe Consensus. But what about you, Craig?
Yeah, if we're talking about consensus and Futurist, we'll be we're a partner with the Futurist conference this year. We'll be holding a morning event and an evening after party, but the after party will probably be mid consensus rather than Futurist. So the morning event will probably be related to the Futurist conference, and later in the week to get the bigger audience of the consensus being in town for the first time. I'm curious as to see what that's going to look like. It's too bad that, the Canadian government didn't decide to support the Futurist conference, where they are expanding internationally, and they brought an international conference that does the same thing they did. But, it is what it is. And hopefully the Futurist will be back next year.
Well, you know what? I was getting a lot of feedback about Consensus from people and Futurist, and people said they much prefer, they get a much better value out of Futurist than they do out of Consensus, which is interesting.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Futurist is a one-day event this year versus a multi-day event in previous years. That's why
one-day event here in Canada, multi-day event in Miami.
So check that out. If you're looking for funding and you're moving your business along, where should they go, John?
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn. Talk non-dilutive funding with you, government funding. If you've got some income, you've got some employees. Or you've got some traction, come reach out to me.
And if you're looking to automate your business, go to programmer.ca, book a discovery call, and we can talk about AI and automation and how you can actually take your business to the next level. For everything else, go over to torontostarts.com. That's where you find this podcast. That's where you find all our events like Startup Drinks TO, our AI and automation workshops, and all that stuff over at torontostarts.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, guys.